First, we had the swing era. From the 1930s to mid-40s, big band jazz dominated popular music. Duke Ellington, Benny Goodman, a bunch of brass instruments, and a bandleader playing stuff people could dance to. Then came World War II, and suddenly it was harder to get a full band together. Individual crooners with smaller bands and bigger voices like Bing Crosby and Frank Sinatra began to dominate the charts. Call this the sing era.
Would you like to swing on a star? Carry moonbeams home in a jar?
Then, in the early 1950s, an Oregon musician caught a wave that would reshape popular music again.
We're coming out of World War II, and the economy is booming. And this is really essential in establishing, for the first time, this really clearly defined demographic of the teenager.
Professor Zach Wallmark is a musicologist at the University of Oregon.
You have young people who in previous generations might have been working on the farm, and they get married really early and they move into their adult lives without much of a transition. But this is a moment where teens find themselves with a little bit of extra cash in their pocket, discretionary some time to spend, and a lot of this energy goes towards what? Entertainment, buying records.
Before teenagers were a thing, Wallmark says, music was for adults. But as kids and young adults started buying music, tastes changed. The music changed.
1, 2, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, rock. 5, 6, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, rock.
There's an argument to be made that rock and roll changed the world. Today, we have the story of two mostly forgotten Oregon bands that changed rock and roll. From the Gert Boyle Studio, I'm Jen Chavez, and this is The Evergreen, a podcast from OPB about the place you call home. A place no one ever thinks of as integral to popular music, but which actually played a critical role in shaping the sound of the biggest bands in the world. But before there was rock and roll, there was another, more basic push and pull happening in the recording industry over what music itself should sound like and how it should be made.
So during World War II, the Germans started experimenting with electromagnetic tape and recording sound on tape. These advances after the end of the war are really quick to be picked up across the rest of the Western world.
Before tape recording, songs could only be made in professional studios, and therefore only by professional musicians. And that restriction kind of defined the sound. Take, for example, The Yellow Rose of Texas by Mitch Miller and his orchestra and his chorus. The music is mathematically precise. The recording has a ton of reverb or echo on it. It sounds very professional, but maybe kind of impersonal. You can barely tell one voice from another. But by and large, this reflects mainstream popular music at the time.
Mitch Miller was one of the most successful, popular, well-known musicians in America in the early 1950s. And he thought of the recording studio, he thought of recordings as these opportunities to create these perfect, polished musical objects.
She cried so when I left her, it like to broke my heart. And if I ever find her, we never more
After World War II, however, music began to move outside the studio. Over time, it became possible for almost anyone to record a song.
In 1952, there was a 17-year-old kid named Don Howard who recorded a song called Oh Happy Day. Very amateurish, poor recording quality. It was recorded very badly.
The sun is shining, oh happy day, no more troubles and no skies are gray, ever since you said those words to me.
But it just blew up amongst teenagers. Why did it blow up? It blew up because folks saw themselves in it. So you had this tension between a Mitch Miller type who had a show on television every week and was dominating the charts. And on the other hand, you have somebody like a Don Howard in the early 50s, just a teenager, unpolished, ragged, putting their stuff out. So this fundamental tension really comes into sharp focus in the mid-century. And this is really the context for Johnny Ray.
Just walking in the rain, getting soaking wet.
Johnny Ray. Born and raised in Dallas, Oregon, where as a kid he would sit down at the family piano and figure out songs by ear. It was the kind of musical talent that seemed incompatible with something like hearing loss.
He was able to figure out music just by putting it on the piano and where the notes would go.
Randall Ray is Johnny Ray's nephew.
But it would require that he would have to play it loud to hear it well.
Roger Haas is another nephew.
He wore an old-fashioned hearing aid with the wire hanging down and the big battery pack. He had to wear that because he was deaf without it.
By all accounts, it barely slowed him down. By the time he was 15, he was traveling to Portland to sing on a local radio show. In high school, he would sneak out of the house to go downtown and play shows in bars. It was starting to seem like maybe he could make this his life.
He told me about going to see Sophie Tucker. And she said, young man, if you want to be in show business, the first thing I'd do is get the hell out of Portland.
Alan Eichler was Johnny Ray's manager.
So he did. He went to Los Angeles. He supported himself by working in different clubs, playing piano and singing. But his goal was really to be an actor.
When he didn't get a record deal in LA, he bounced around and eventually landed in Detroit, Michigan, and got a regular gig at a club called the Flame Show Bar.
The Flame Bar was one of the main African-American clubs among Midwestern performers.
Vincent Stevens is a professor in the College of Music at Boston University.
That's really where Johnny Ray was able to kind of cultivate some of those influences and develop his persona.
At the Flame Show, Johnny performed with Black musicians for Black crowds, and they took him in. In interviews, he said that he was, quote, fed and clothed and kept in that community, and that if it hadn't been for the support of Black musicians and fans, quote, there really wouldn't be any Johnny Ray.
And, in the early 50s, Johnny Ray wrote a story for Ebony magazine that focused on the influence of African-American singers. But he also advocated for desegregation, which again was very unusual. And I think it helped him establish a certain amount of credibility with African-American audiences and with folks who listen to and enjoy R&B music.
His time in Detroit also took his performances to the next level. This was where he learned how to be authentically himself on stage, which is to say, he borrowed the flamboyant moves and crowd work of the Black musicians he was performing before and after. At the time, crooners like Frank Sinatra were at the height of their popularity, but their performances were defined almost by a kind of restraint.
So the idea of the crooner really comes out of another technological advance. The microphone lets singers lay back a little bit, and it allows for a degree of intimacy, right? If I can sing into my microphone, I can actually not really project my voice that much. So we feel like we're right next to Sinatra. We feel like we were right next to Bing Crosby.
Fly me to the moon, let me play among the stars, let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars. In other words,
When you went to see Johnny perform, on the other hand, even sitting in the crowd, you often were right next to him.
His performing style was the future, grabbing the microphone, running around the stage.
Manager Alan Eichler again.
People used to just stay in one position and sing. He was all over the place. He'd go out in the audience, and he was full of real raw emotion.
I want to love my baby in my own special way. But she drank my whiskey, lots of whiskey and gin. Oh, gin.
He didn't just sing songs, he lived in them. He flailed around and fell on the floor. He took the audience on a journey, and people noticed.
A disc jockey in Detroit alerted a scout from Columbia Records that they ought to come and catch his act, that he was totally different.
He signed with Columbia Records in 1951, and his first album, Johnny Ray, took off on the charts. At one point, Johnny had both the #1 and the #2 song on the Billboard charts with Cry and a song called The Little White Cloud That Cried. As he toured, he became known for his frenetic, emotional performances, and often literally crying on stage. He earned the nicknames Mr. Emotion and the Prince of Wales, but he was the biggest name in show business.
He wants $10,000. Look, Johnny Ray always gets that much money for his personal appearance. He always gets $10,000? Yes. Then why is he crying all the time?
The big catch with Johnny Ray, and what makes him, I think, really interesting from a music historical perspective, is that the crooners, like Frank Sinatra, like Bing Crosby, were very restrained, were very polished, were very slick. It was all about kind of holding back a little bit. Johnny Ray was just over the top, raw emotion, and this is what connects him, I think, most directly to rock and roll.
Listening now, you wouldn't call any of Johnny Ray's stuff rock and roll, but watch his concert footage and he's performing like a rock star. He gyrates suggestively. He climbs on top of things. He was the bridge between what came before and everything that came next.
Elvis used to study him. When Johnny played Vegas, Elvis would come every night. He learned a lot of his stage technique from watching Johnny.
You ain't nothing but a hound dog, you're crying all the time. You ain't nothing but a hound dog, crying all the time. Well, you ain't never caught a rabbit and you ain't no friend of mine.
At his height in the early 50s, Johnny Ray was as big a star as anyone in the world. Over the next 5 years, he had a half dozen more hit singles like Please Mr. Sun, Such a Night, and Walkin' My Baby Back Home. But there was trouble ahead.
From all accounts, Johnny Ray was essentially bisexual, and it was well known in the industry. It was kind of an open secret.
He was arrested twice, but never convicted, for soliciting undercover police for sex at gay bars. This led to articles speculating about his sexual orientation in the tabloid press. He eventually married the daughter of a nightclub owner, Marilyn Morrison, but it was mostly a stunt.
So his marriage to Marilyn Morrison, I think, temporarily may have allayed some of those fears and concerns, but it was a short-lived marriage. He never formally remarried again.
As the 50s turned into the 60s, Johnny had problems with alcohol. He had problems with the IRS. But his biggest problem was, musically, he got stuck in the past.
He was like a raw talent with rhythm and blues roots, and they turned him into white bread.
Johnny may have laid the groundwork for rock and roll to take over the world, but his producer hated it because Columbia Records paired Johnny Ray with Mitch Miller.
Mitch Miller had his own idea of pop music, and he did not like rock and roll. So nobody on Columbia recorded rock and roll.
Mitch Miller called rock and roll musical baby food.
The right record company could have kept him going in that R&B style and stressed that more, which would have been acceptable to rock and roll fans.
Instead, Johnny made stuff that sounded old. He remained popular in England and Australia, but never found his way back into the collective heart of the American teenager.
All the recordings are good, but none of them capture that early magic.
Where he did leave his mark, however, was on other musicians. Some of the biggest bands of the 60s, the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, Bob Dylan, and Elton John, all credit Johnny Ray as a major influence. His performances showed them how to connect with an audience. Throughout the 70s, he is name-checked or referenced in songs by Billy Idol, Eartha Kitt, Billy Joel, and Van Morrison. Then there's Come On Eileen by Dexy's Midnight Runners. In case you missed those lyrics, poor old Johnny Ray sounded sad upon the radio. He moved a million hearts in mono. Johnny Ray was an icon, but had to watch it all slip away. His only consolation? It's the kind of thing the next generation writes songs about.
So this again speaks to this rise of a teenage demographic, that the teens aren't as content to hear people their parents' age giving them music. They want to hear people like them.
After the break, a bunch of young people from Oregon accidentally change music again. Thanks for listening to The Evergreen, our podcast from OPB about the place you call home. If you dig our sound and want more where that came from, subscribe to us on your favorite podcast app, and we'll pep up your Monday morning with something new and exciting to listen to each week. And remember, this episode about Oregon's place in rock and roll history and all the great OPB reporting and storytelling you hear on this show is made possible by the support of many thousands of OPB members. Your love for public media is music to our ears. Support our journalism by becoming an OPB sustaining member today at opb.org/pod. And now, back to the show. Where Johnny Ray had all the raw musical talent in the world, but bad luck and a producer stuck in the past, this next band had almost the exact opposite situation. The song is Louie Louie. The band is the Kingsmen. But the Kingsmen didn't write the song. That honor goes to a musician named Richard Berry, who recorded the first version in 1956. But even Berry lifted the chord progression from a song called El Loco Cha-Cha-Cha by legendary Cuban bandleader René Toussaint. At the time, the coolest songs all had specific dance steps associated with them, like the mashed potato or the Watusi, do the twist. Berry wanted a song kids could dance the cha-cha to. But his version didn't make much of a splash. It wasn't until the Seattle band Rockin' Robin Roberts and the Wailers heard it and started touring with their version that the song caught on. It became a moderately successful single in Los Angeles. By 1961, it had become a dance hall staple in the Pacific Northwest. In 1962, Kingsmen singer Jack Ely was in Seaside, Oregon, and saw kids dancing and playing it over and over again on a jukebox. He taught his band the song from memory and didn't get it exactly right, but they still started performing it every night as the house band at a dance club in Milwaukee, just south of Portland. On April 6, 1963, the Kingsmen got together to record their version. They were going to send it out as a demo to try and get work on cruise ships. And here's where the band had the kind of luck that only comes from being a scrappy underdog in a musical backwater. Because the studio in Portland wasn't used to recording bands. They usually did simple stuff like radio jingles and commercials for car dealerships. The engineer didn't know how to mic something so loud, so the band set up around the room and played to a single microphone hung from the ceiling. Singer Jack Ely had to almost shout to be heard above the drums. He sings like someone having trouble forming the words around a mouth full of braces, which was because he was having trouble forming the words around his mouth full of braces. The recording is loud, rough, and ecstatic. They're having a blast. It doesn't sound good, exactly. In fact, there's a legitimate mistake about a minute 45 into the song, coming out of Mike Mitchell's guitar solo, where singer Jack Ely starts singing too early and has to stop and wait for the band to catch up. But even with the mistake, they only played the whole song once, straight through, and then they moved on. It was just a demo for a cruise line. Their manager assured them that they would record a better version and fix their mistakes before releasing an album. But that never happened. About 6 months later, a Boston DJ presented the song as his worst record of the week, and people loved it.
What we hear with Louie Louie is something that is raw, that is simplistic, that is shaggy. There's a lot of, as you said, just straight up errors, mistakes. The recording quality is sort of lo-fi. You get a lot of room bleed. It's decidedly amateurish. It sounds like a bunch of teenagers just tossing something together or just jamming in a garage.
Thanks to Jack Ely's braces, it's also kind of a blank slate, lyrically.
It's really difficult to understand what they're saying in Louie Louie. They're slurring their words, they're mumbling.
Richard Berry's version of the song is about a Jamaican sailor telling a bartender, Louie, that he has to get home to his one true love. But no one knew what the Kingsmen's version was about.
And the fact that we don't really know what they're saying was something that was concerning to some parents. They saw it as something dangerous, like maybe they're saying something lewd.
It probably didn't help that in the absence of intelligible speech, kids often wrote their own lyrics to the song. And those lyrics were definitely obscene.
The FBI launched a very short-lived probe to try to figure out whether there was something obscene going on in the song. They couldn't figure it out, and they dropped it.
The governor of Indiana banned the song. The Kingsmen eventually had to testify in front of the Federal Communications Commission that the lyrics weren't lewd or obscene. The FCC deemed the song unintelligible at any speed when it lifted the ban.
This happens every generation. Every generation there's this flashpoint where the parents not only don't like their kids' music, but they think that their kids' music is bad for them. This happened in the 1920s with jazz. This happened in the rock and roll era in the 1950s, rock being the devil's music. This happened with disco. This happened with rap. This is the recurring story in American popular music. The elders not understanding, but also viewing as a threat the music that their kids like.
There's also almost no better way to guarantee a hit record than to frighten parents.
There's a strong racial component to this as well. Moving your body certain ways, these are racially coded. So any of these cases that I just randomly mentioned here of fears of music is also a fear of racial mixture. Or it's a fear of, quote unquote, our youth being activated by or changed by the aesthetic norms of them.
Where Johnny Ray knowingly borrowed from a tradition of extravagant crowd work that was popular in Black Midwestern dance halls, the Kingsmen unknowingly stepped into a much older Black tradition.
Good God Almighty, not a captain riding, how Lord, no. Oh, Captain, won't you help me? Good God Almighty, oh, Captain, won't you help me?
I mean, the idea of using vocal sounds that are not intelligible as language, shouts, hollers, moans, grunts, things like this is as old as Black American music. This goes back to field hollers in the 19th and 18th centuries. Early blues is full of vocal utterances that are not strictly speaking linguistic. They're not intelligible in that way. So when a bunch of white teenagers are getting up there and they're playing a strong, heavy beat that's raw, that makes you want to dance to it, and they're just kind of slurring and mumbling some syllables, this feels a little bit transgressive.
By December, it was the number 2 song in the country and stayed there for 6 weeks. Essentially, they exposed a demand for a new kind of music that wasn't super concerned with sounding good.
What the Kingsmen are doing, and the reason why some people call them kind of proto-punk, is that there's a rejection or a reaction to polish and musical training in the sort of elite world of mainstream music making at the time, which was viewed by a lot of teenagers as kind of phony. Of course, they end up gaining fame and wealth from specifically Louie Louie, but the sort of posturing against success, against being popular. There's an interesting bridge that you've identified here between Johnny Ray prioritizing emotion over something more polished and the Kingsmen, which create this additional statement from the Pacific Northwest of a sort of raw, unmediated emotionality that doesn't care if you understand their lyrics or not, that doesn't care if the sonic quality is a bit subpar. They're just sort of letting it hang out there.
The Kingsmen weren't the only influence, but you can hear an echo of Louie Louie in the next few waves of music to come out of the Northwest. Punk in the 70s. Alternative rock in the 80s. And grunge in the 90s.
What we're seeing here is the needle gradually moving towards a particular notion of authenticity, of rawness, of audiences wanting access to performers who they believe are being themselves.
Music doesn't evolve in a straight line. It's not dominoes falling over so much as general trends that eventually harden into the story of an art form. So it's difficult to say if 2 bands from the same part of the world, both disrupting the music industry and pushing it forward, one after the other, it's hard to say if these 2 bands really say much about Oregon or not. Music is guided by larger forces.
They are riding a broader set of waves. At the same time, I would say that Oregon in the middle of the 20th century is decidedly peripheral to two things. It's peripheral to the popular music centers of the United States. It's also geographically peripheral to Black America. There was really a very small Black population in a place like Portland prior to this point. And oftentimes in the history of musical style, innovation comes from the periphery. Ideas that folks maybe haven't thought about in the centers burble up on the fringes.
When Johnny Ray wanted to get into show business, he was told to get the hell out of Portland.
I mean, I think Oregon is this kind of sleepy backwater place a little bit, and not much connection to Los Angeles and New York or Chicago. So in some ways, that's creating this sort of context where people can be a little bit freer in what they do, because there really isn't necessarily that much of a script to follow.
Maybe what we can learn from the story of these two bands is simply that better advice for a young musician might have been, go find a place where there's room to grow, room to make mistakes, and have happy accidents. Go somewhere you can try new things with people who will push you out of your comfort zone. Find a place where you can do something different and be celebrated for it. I don't know. That kind of sounds like Portland. You can learn much more about the life and legacy of Johnny Ray from the documentary OPB's Oregon Experience made about him, which was written and produced by OPB's Cami Horton. Look for a link to her piece in our show notes. Thank you for listening to The Evergreen, a podcast from OPB. Peter Frickwright produced this episode, and our technical director is Stephen Cray. Layla Isbell mixed and mastered the episode. The OPB podcast team also includes Mia Estrada, Julie Sabatier, and Sage Van Wing. Peter Frickwright interviewed musicologist Professor Zach Walmark. Cami Horton did the other interviews you heard, which were filmed by cinematographer Dan Evans. Music used in this episode includes Take the A-Train by Duke Ellington, Swinging on a Star by Bing Crosby, The Bowery Grenadiers / Whistle Stop, and The Yellow Rose of Texas by Mitch Miller and his orchestra and his chorus, Rock Around the Clock by Bill Haley and his Comets, Oh Happy Day by Don Howard, Walkin' in the Rain, Cry, Let's Walk That Away, and Texas Tambourine by Johnny Ray, Hound Dog by Elvis, Fly Me to the Moon by Frank Sinatra, Come On Eileen by Dexy's Midnight Runners, Louie Louie by The Kingsmen, Louie Louie by Richard Berry, Louie Louie by Rockin' Robin Roberts and the Wailers, El Loco Cha 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 by Renee Touzé, It Makes a Longtime Man Feel Bad, recorded by Alan Lomax at the Mississippi State Penitentiary, Good God Almighty by Lightning Washington and recorded by Alan Lomax, London Calling by The Clash, Where Is My Mind by The Pixies, and Smells Like Teen Spirit by Nirvana. Our theme music and scoring comes from Audio Network. And hey, if you have a question for us about rock history or anything else, please reach out. We're all ears. Just send us an email at theevergreen@opb.org. I'm Jen Chavez. Catch you later.